We're live.
Okay. We are going to call the Wednesday, July 22nd Board of Ed meeting back to order. Everyone please silence your electronic devices and we will stand or talk or speak the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance.
Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Additions and deletions since Friday mailing.
Yes, we're going to just have 7.8. We're going to be adding Erin Sawyer, Eric Stott, and Nicole Kyer to the, the IXL Summer Teachers Program.
Okay. I get a motion for the addition of 7.8. Mr. Ross, a second. Mr. Engel, all in favor? Aye. You need a motion for the acceptance of the minutes of the July 1st, 2020 reorg meeting. Mr. Engel, Mr. Hislop, all in favor? Aye. I need a motion for the acceptance of the minutes of the July 1st, 2020 BOE meeting. Mr. Ross, Mr. Hislop, all in favor? Aye. We have no awards, honors, recognitions. We have no hearings and petitions. I need a motion for one or all of the business considerations. Motion for all of them?
We can't hear you, Brian.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. You got a second?
Motion for all.
Mrs. Burns, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's pass. Need a motion for one or all of the personnel considerations.
Motion for all again.
Okay. A second? Mrs. Burns, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's pass. 8.1 informational items. And then special reports. We have no special reports. Any other board members have anything to report on? No? Okay, we will turn it over to Dr. Bailey.
So unquestionably the hot topic in New York State is the reopening of schools. And RCS is no different. We have a lot to consider as we plan for coming back together in September. As you may know, New York State came out with their guidance last week. Both the Department of Health came out early in the week, and then SED came out later in the week. And they're not completely in sync, but the rule of thumb, out of the 135-page State Education Department document, rule of thumb is you defer to the 23-page Department of Health document. The Department of Health actually has a priority over SED. And of course, our reopening committees have been meeting since June, bi-weekly, but we've increased that to weekly right now. The priorities, as we've been doing our planning, are around social emotional health. If you as family parents, you know the state of your children who have been not allowed to see their friends, not allowed to see their teachers, that it is very stressful both on the staff and the students and the families. We want to continue to provide quality instruction. We need to make sure our operations are as they need to protect everyone. And we have to have all the supports in place to train our staff. Here's what SED expects of us. They have some major categories, instruction, and I want you to know that through these considerations, we are considering every possible affectation, from full in-person instruction to full remote instruction, which is required by the state. We're having discussions about trying to get all of our elementaries in and full-time as best we can, and figuring out what we do with our students who are more advanced. Because with social distancing, it becomes problematic to have all of our children in the buildings at one time. They obviously want us to address health and safety issues, all the ones that you would imagine, how we trace, how we take care of attestations, which we'll talk about later, and obviously social distancing and hygiene. And then all the other nuances, how we're feeding kids, whether they're in school or out, how we're transporting them safely, what's the schedule going to look like, what are we going to do for interscholastic sports or extracurriculars, dealing with chronic absenteeism, making sure our families are connected, and we have to have a communications plan. So here's where we are, and these are just frameworks. These aren't solid by any stretch of the imagination, but we're estimating that we can fit approximately 14 to 18 students in a classroom, socially distanced. That means removing a lot of ancillary furniture, cabinetry, extra desks, extra student desks or staff desks, other materials that aren't an imperative for instruction. And obviously, we talked last time that our classes in the elementary school average between 17 to 23, in the 20s in fifth grade primarily, and then in the high teens in the other grades. So even with our low class sizes, it's still probably too big to fit into a class as we currently stand, classroom as we currently stand. At the secondary level, middle school classes are quite large. They're in the low 20s, the most of them, a majority of them, which would mean that we have to come up with alternative schedule where we can have students who aren't in the building all at one time. And we run into the same issues at the high school. So elementary school, we want to get our elementary kids in as much as possible for these reasons. They are the most vulnerable. And we know that if they're not at school, we can't restart the economy. Some of the versions we're talking about are transportation is going to be a hanging point. If we're expected to distance students 6 feet on a bus, that means on our largest bus, we'll be able to fit 18 to 20 kids. That won't work when we're accustomed to transporting 40. So transportation is going to end up driving a lot of this, even though we talked about class size. So we may end up with elementaries being in school every day, but they may be on a shortened day, or they may be on an alternative schedule, a day that starts later than what they ordinarily be accustomed to. There's supposed to be additional guidance coming out from New York State on transportation this week, and we are waiting for that information.
So,
sorry, there we go.
Brian, we're going through this presentation, and we have a lot of questions. There's still a lot of, these are guidelines and scenarios. Where are we at with our plan, being that we need to turn a plan in 9 days to the state? Where are we at with an actual plan and making decisions on how we're going to move forward? I mean, the reason I ask some of these things is every day this week, schools are starting to roll their plans out, and it seems like we're just going through guidelines right now. Like we haven't put any kind of plan together yet.
If you look at their plans, they are what I'm presenting to you. It says so-and-so may go on a hybrid schedule where students come in alternating days. It doesn't say our students will. It says they may be. This is what they're putting out from the ones that I've seen so far. The biggest reason is the guidance came out 6 days ago. It's just an impossibility to create the answer to the question in 6 days.
Okay.
But the other thing that you see is you see schools doing live streaming. They're presenting what I'm presenting right now. They're talking through the guidance and what the possibilities are, what will happen when schools reopen. At the secondary level, and I apologize, I missed 7th grade here. We're talking about grades 7 through 12. We know that they need in-person instruction. We were fully remote in the spring. That's not our preferred methodology. And this The older kids are a little bit more capable. Today we had a discussion about maybe allowing those students who've been more successful in remote learning to have less of a requirement to be there in person than those that are struggling most. And those may be students who either are disconnected because of technological reasons or disconnected because they're just not thriving under these conditions. It could be an alternating day schedule. So we split the student population 7 to 12 in half. One group comes in on day A, and the other one comes in on B. We could split it up by weeks and say Monday, Tuesday is one group, and Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, Friday. We're considering block scheduling, and Fred can talk about some of these things as well, where instead of having to take 6 to 8 classes in September, we instead do some block scheduling and we reduce the caseload, reduce the number of classes by semestering or trimestering. So a student is only having to take 2 or 3 courses in person and remotely. And if we end up going remotely, obviously that would significantly lighten the load. Those of you who are parents who've had kids in school right now in the spring, who are trying to do all the classes that they have remotely, it was extremely complex for them, time consuming and complex. So we know that there are class size limitations based on physical space. And we know that there's going to be some families who refuse to send their children back. So community input, the thought exchange went live yesterday. Here's the question that was asked. And I think we have almost 700 respondents so far. 700 respondents, and I'm going to come out of this for a second so we can see this. Hold on.
Brian, as you're going through all this, obviously there's lots of options out there, and we've talked about many options, and lots of schools out there have many ideas and stuff like that. What's the drop dead date where you have to pick essentially a plan or a couple plans and start to build the structure around that, right? So if you say you're going to do AB days or you're going to do block scheduling or what, right? There's lots of things that have to happen in order to be able to do that, right? The teachers need to know what they're doing. The teachers have to figure out, okay, now I'm working with a multitude of different teachers. We're going to teach them one classroom, or I'm going to do just 2 semesters. I'm going to do, 3. I'm going to do a trimester. Those types of things. That changes the dynamics a lot. So, I would say, by August 15th, if you're not working on these things, you're way behind, right? So submitting a plan to the government by next week, whatever that requirement, is, I don't know how much time you have to actually build the structure to execute any of these.
It's an unfair challenge. I would concur. So here's the timeline we're working from. We're expected to submit our framework to the state by a week from this Friday. So it gives us a full 11 days, 11 business days to create a plan and submit it. But here's what I'll be honest about, and in speaking with all of the superintendents from all the school districts in the area, we will be submitting a framework for our reentry. There's a formula. There's a 23-page formula that BOCES has provided for us, and we're also working with our safety consultants, that we just fill in the areas that are relevant to RCS. We're going to submit a framework, and there's going to be a link to our website, and it's going to continue to evolve. Although we're submitting a framework of our plan for what's going to happen, where we really have to know what's going to happen is September 8th. We backward maps from there. We communicate with families what we need. We give the professional development to our staff. The July 31st is a ridiculous expectation in all schools in New York. But I want you to know that we're going to come to consensus in the first or second week of August about truly what we're going to do, because there's a lot of communication that has to be put in place in order to do it. So although we're submitting next week and we have extra meetings, committee meetings, it will not be the finalized plan. It'll be close. And when we are sending out communication to our families next week, we're going to be asking them for some solid information on whether or not they plan on sending their child back, whether or not their child will be on school transportation, and whether or not they have access to technology. But we didn't want to ask those questions until we gave families some idea of what it is we intend to do. You watch the news, you get all kinds of information and misinformation about the spread of the virus and about how people deal with that. So when we send out this next survey next week, it will include some of the planning that we have around student safety and around scheduling so that families will be able to have a little bit more enlightened say in what we're talking about. So I wanted to share this with you quickly. This is the thought exchange that's out right now. We've had 666 people present. That's an ominous number, or participants so far. Actually, let me refresh it. Maybe there's more. Okay, 672 participants so far. They've contributed over 1,000 different ideas or questions around this topic, and they've rated 22,000 times. What this will do for us, and I'm not going to go too deeply in this because it's not closed by any means, is we can see what people's priorities are, and this will greatly increase our ability to both plan and to communicate with families in the areas where they need it most. So the clear plan, for instance, the top rated comment is, we need to be able to communicate what will happen when there is a COVID outbreak in the district. What's the plan B? How are we going to ensure social distancing and clean spaces? We have to consider how we're going to implement safety while creating a learning environment that students can actually succeed in. So we'll be using the feedback from this, and this doesn't close until Monday of next week, to help build what happens next. And unlike one of those streaming, here's what we're going to do things, this allows everyone to have a voice in it right now. We give them some information next week, and they'll have another opportunity to give voice to what their concerns are based on that. This is terrifying, and it's overwhelming, and everybody is firing on all pistons trying to get to the finish line with this. We're so grateful, the group of people that have stood by us and helped us with this, the teachers, the parents, the students, the support staff who have participated in these subcommittees are fantastic, both in their breadth of knowledge and their passion for trying to do the right thing on behalf of all of our children. And they're donating their time. They're donating 2 hours a week, essentially, to this work, and we're very grateful for that, including some of our board members.
Brian, do we have access to some of those discussions or talking points or priorities? Like, is there any kind of readout of what's been discussed during those committees?
It won't be until next week because when the guidance came out last week, yesterday was the first day that the groups had a chance to actually react to that. We met as a leadership team on Thursday to talk through what that might look like, and that's where we came up with like the menu of possibilities. But since the group only started talking about it yesterday, we didn't want to share out minutes for discussion because it's too fractured, and we don't want to mislead people in what we may end up deciding to do. But by next week, it will be a little bit more codified. And like I said, we'll be sharing a sketch of what it will look like so families can make enlightened decisions about their students' return.
So, Brian, how are we going to adapt if we're going to have a final plan on August 18th, which gives us 3 weeks before the first day of school? So when we roll our plan back and then we start getting even more feedback and parent complaints or any other kind of issues, how are we going to adapt in such short time to what we need to do or how we're going to handle it? Is that going to all be in place ahead of time?
Yeah, and what's really going to happen is by the first week in August, the committees will have formulated their reopening plan. In other words, the glossy stuff that goes on the website by the first week in August, and we'll be able to share that out. The other work that has to be done is how are we going to do it? For instance, if we say the high school is going to come on an A-B schedule, alternating weeks. So half the kids in the Becker catchment come to school for a week, and half the kids in Peter B go to school in the opposing week, which is great because it helps with the standardization process. We have consistent students for an entire week, so you have consistency in instruction. We would just share Becker students will be here these weeks, or whatever, however we want to project that. The details of what that will look like in transportation and all the rest of that, that's the work that we'll do after the first week in August. But if someone were to go on the website, they would see, oh, my child's going to school these weeks, and they're going to be remote these weeks. And here's Google Classroom, and here's a primer on how they're going to use Google Classroom. So it's just the action stuff. Like we say, every student's going to do a self-health check before they come to school in the morning. We may not know how they're going to do it on August 4th, but we will know it by the 18th.
So, but the thing is, if we're not rolling out our plan until the 18th, when does our staff, our entire staff, find out about this plan? So when we roll it out on the 18th, parents, kids, they know what's going to happen. Or is that when staff's going to have to decide how they're going to adapt to our plan? I guess
this isn't going to be comforting to you, but there is no way to create a plan faster than this. All those problems you're saying are exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be a problem.
It seems like I get more concerned because we've talked about this since last year or when last school year of what's the new year going to look like? What's the new year going to look like? And then, everything's quiet. We've had zero communication. We've had no communication of what our plan is, what committees are doing. So the board hasn't heard anything. So then all of a sudden schools start rolling these plans out and parents are starting to ask the questions. Staff are starting to ask the questions. So all of a sudden they look to board members with all of these questions and we have no answers. I have no communication. I don't know what to even tell anybody except for, well, I guess we're going to find out Wednesday where we're at with it. So I'm a little concerned, I guess, because now that all these things are rolling out from other schools and us not even having anything thought of until another month, I guess I'm getting nervous because parents are starting to ask a lot of questions.
I would be very appreciative if a board member saw a school disseminate a completed plan to please send it to me, because I'm working with 24 BOCES superintendents and not a single school district has a plan. They have ideas just like we've just presented. And I think, and the big thing that you're talking about, Teddy, is people's curiosity about what we want to do, or sorry, what we're attempting to do and what the constraints are. So we can definitely project out a little bit more about these lists of possibilities. There's no question about that. And if that will help at least let people know that we're having these discussions, that'd be good. We've updated our website. We're doing the community outreach now, because we did wait for the plan to come out before we said, here's our plan. But go ahead.
I mean, I think communication is the most important thing. I mean, the superintendent or principal from Catholic Central's on the news this week. People don't look at everybody's plans. They just hear Catholic Central saying, hey, our attendance up 15, 20% because we have this great plan and parents trust us. Or what's the other one I sent you? Shen has their plan. So everybody sees this in the media and, we're still sitting there kind of, eyes wide open going, what are we doing? So I don't know. I don't know if we have to start putting more communication on Facebook, on the website, on whatever other social media. I mean, just of our plan, that we do have a plan. We do have some guidelines that we've started looking at. Because again, parents are asking the questions. They see it on TV. They see 5 seconds of it, and then they want to know what we're doing.
Sure.
Yeah.
And just to piggyback on what Teddy was saying, I did do a search today of a number of school districts all around us. And you're right, there are no solid plans on any of those, but there is a lot of details about what their considerations are. And so in plain English, people are seeing, these are our committees, these are what they're looking at, these are some of our talking points, be it that we cannot make any solid projections until after the governor's guidance comes out or based on this day, but people have to build this confidence that we don't just flip a switch. We may know, hearing you tonight right now, that you have a plan set out in your mind that's very comprehensive, but to build that confidence into what will come out on September 8th, people want to know what's going on behind the scenes. And I get that there's a feeling of guardedness that we could put something up there that does not materialize or we don't go down that road. But that's part of the deliberations that people want to know we are considering. Whether it's a bad idea, a good idea, it's just part of our process. So I was able to find some of the information on our website, but it was very challenging. It was one link to another link to another link, where many of the schools have it right on their opening page. This is an update as of this day. This is an update as of this day. So I appreciate that we can check the box that some of these things are able to be found, but we want to project the confidence and user friendliness that our particular district is seeking.
This is good. Yep. Today is the first day. The three parents that reached out to me saying we were curious about reopening, I had them join the committees. We had the PTAs work to help us gather parent members of our reopening committees, but anybody who inquired with me, which were the three families, I asked them to join, and they have. And I haven't heard from any staff yet, but that could be because they know that they have their colleagues who are participating in the process. There should be an ease of access to it. And I think that is a very good idea.
Dr. Bailey, I just have one quick question. The Board of Education is going to ultimately decide how we open. What will we be deciding on? What will we be voting on? Are we voting on anything? Is it up to us? We take your recommendation. Can you elaborate on that?
I don't think to my knowledge, there isn't a resolution that the board has to take action on. That's not something that I'd heard yet, but I'll ask that question. I'll ask the question.
Thank you.
I think communication, not only, like we said, we talked about putting on our website and stuff like that, but I think we should put, on our high school sign as well. Like, hey, we just put something out, make sure you're checking your email. We really need your feedback. Even just some considerations that we have, right? We know transportation is going to be difficult. Any ideas you have, share those types of things, right? Just to kind of let them know, or just the high level things, right? We've kind of put curriculum into 3 different categories, right? We've got 1st through 6 or 1st through 7. We've got 8 through 12. We've broken up into different things. Anything like that gives the community a sense that there's lots of ideas kicking around, that, we're working on things. Obviously, it's all challenging. It always changes, masks, are now being required in the Americas versus just New York State, right? So there's things that are changing day by day, right? But no information just gives a lot of people angst. And I don't think too many families loved homeschooling. I don't think they were thrilled by that. I don't think the student population, most of them, loved it. Some of them excelled, others did not. So I think all of those things are in the back of parents' mind going, oh my God, if this is going to happen come September, how am I going to do this? I'm now back to work, or this didn't work for my child at all. I can't do this again. So letting it go all the way into August before we communicate anything, even though we're going to send out a framework that's going to be very basic to the government, we won't have anything kind of detailed. There has to be something, even if it changes week by week, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised by that. Literally day by day, we change directions of what we're supposed to be doing, stuff like that. So I think, more information is better than no information. Mm-hmm. And I know it's difficult to put it out all the time, and it's more workload on everybody, but it doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be something.
And I think everybody in the communities understand that we could have the best laid plans for September 8th, and then something spike in October and it all goes to hell. I think that we all know that that's the reality that we're all living in right now. So there has to be an element of flexibility, and part of our communication is that everything we're putting out there is with the best intention to keep people feeling like they're involved in the process. But ultimately, anything at any time can change based on what we know at this moment.
Yep. The other thing I asked of the families that reached out to me in the last few weeks is between the time when the committees develop the framework and when it's sent out to the entire community, I'd asked if they would vet the document to give some feedback so that it's hardened in a way that seems to speak to the people who have the concerns. Ideally, we'll be able to produce something that does answer enough questions so that people do think that there's a plan, even if it's one that is fluid.
So in your conversations, Brian, do you feel like we're in the same place as all the other school districts, that are comparable in size and structure? Or do you feel that, we're ahead? Are we behind? What is your position?
I think we're spot on. And Fred has done the good work of trying to stay lockstep with some of our neighboring districts, north-south. So while I'm working with the BOCES, the larger area, he's working with the districts closest to us. And it is very gratifying that when we get to some landmarks that we say, all right, we're going to try and block schedule because it's the best way to get students the information in a concentrated amount of time. And we're communicating with our neighboring schools and we're hearing the same types of language and the same types of ideas. So I think we're spot on where we need to be. It's an amazingly daunting task. And it won't, whatever we do will not answer everyone's concerns, unfortunately. But we want to get as close as we can. I know from the preliminary numbers from the thought exchange where people are emotionally right now, whether they believe that they're unsure whether they want their senior child back, they're very anxious about it, or they're already refusing. If we have 50 to 60% of the people who are in those areas right now, and we release a type of plan, some framework to them, and we ask the question again, we know we will have done some good work if we've reduced those numbers significantly. And that's our target. Want to give people enough information, have confidence in their child returning to school so that they'll be safe.
Brian, one other question I have about the reopening, and again, I understand it's probably a little early in the process, but because transportation has historically been a barrier for us and we've had challenges, how will public schools be asked to respond to the needs of private and parochial schools who may have a completely different priority list in terms of reopening and getting their students back in the door if we're trying to adjust to capacity issues? Is there leeway that moves down the priority list so that we can accommodate the public school students, or is that not even a part of the conversation?
I missed the very first part of it, Tina. You had mentioned private schools and their planning. What was the first part?
Just how a school district like us that has some challenges trying to accommodate all of those transportation needs, how will they have to respond if private and parochial schools have different priorities for reopening, or maybe there's just not going to be any accommodations for them? They're going to go full steam ahead while we're trying to accommodate things like spacing and distancing and a reduction in our capacity.
Yeah, the only immediate concern that we have with the private schools is what happens with their scheduling. We're going to have that issue with both our BOCES programs and CTE and our private schools because we transport. On a generalized term, we're in better shape than a lot of neighboring districts as far as our capacity to provide instruction to the student population that we have. In other words, when we were discussing before the state guidance came out, some of my fellow superintendents were saying in order for us to instruct the the students at the elementary level with the appropriate social distancing, we're going to need to hire 40 more staff members in order to monitor and teach the kids. And we're going to have to use our middle and high school to teach those elementary kids because they have class sizes that are 25 to 30. We are in a much better spot than them, but we already know that even today, like we were trying to, based on the existing guidance about transportation, we know it's going to take about an hour and a half to do a bus run. Because not only does it take the hour for the buses to do a route, all the buses need to be sanitized prior to going out for the next bus route. So you're talking about an hour and a half bus route. Right now, we have our bus routes drop off pretty close. They're almost right to it. They drop off at one location and they go right out and do their next run to get the kids to the building for the next one. We're adding sanitization, and we know we're going to have to reduce the size. That right there demands that we have a shortened day because there's no way to deliver all the kids with an hour and a half in between the drop-off. The things that are going to push us around here aren't the things that we want to push us around. And we're fingers crossed that there's the new transportation guidance gives us more flexibility so that we're not forced into doing something that is just, no one is happy with the end result.
So Brian, excuse me, as I go back to these things, you know, Shen's made a decision. They have no options anymore. They're K through 5 kids. They're going to school every day. Their other kids are AB days. That's what the news reports are saying, that it says they're going alternate days. So does that mean like Shen's made this decision already?
Shen's framework says we are considering potentially staggered student arrival is under consideration. 712 is planned for an alternate day with a half of the students coming to school for 2 consecutive days and the other half coming the next 2 consecutive days.
Right. So is that what these guys, I mean, it just seems that's the trend that these schools are coming out with. I mean, with the plan, but I guess, I mean, they're making these decisions already and then waiting for the governor's final approval, or what do you see as a trend with these other schools? I mean, who else has released them? I haven't kept an eye on it. I just know what people, you know, are sending these to us.
Yeah, as I read through their document, there's a lot of will be reviewed, or we anticipate, or we expect. Yeah. There isn't an entirety of, because they don't have the action plans ironed out yet, they've got some broad brushstrokes, which is good. It's a great starting point. And I think from our meeting yesterday morning, we also have some big brushstrokes that we can record very similar to this. We'll use this as our model. I shared this with everyone after our meetings yesterday. I don't truly believe that there will be any entity at the state checking and validating our plan. I have to be bluntly honest and say 725 plus page plans are not going to be reviewed in any reasonable timeline. So it's an exercise to say that it was accomplished. But even so, we're going to do it with fidelity, and we're going to link it to our website, which can have the flexibility to update and modify as we encounter the next roadblock. We'll be able to adapt as we need to.
As far as all these dates go that we have you seen anything as far as what state ed or the governor, like what his lockdown date is, of he's going to come out with anything that he wants to see? Like, are we supposed to hear from them on August 7th, August 10th? Do we have any dates from the state?
The governor allowed the Department of Health to speak for him. So that is his voice. The state education department is not necessarily his voice, but they are the guiding organization from the state. The only thing the governor has promised us is that in that first week of August, he's going to take a look at our infectious rate and make a determination about whether we come back full, which means we're able to deliver our plan, whatever that may be, whether we are or whether we're required to be closed until further notice.
Yeah.
Brian, do you know if there's going to be the probability that if you have a positive case in your district, similar to the spring, that the schools would have to close and sanitize everything again? Is that part of the safety plans?
The Department of Health guidelines don't speak to that the same way they did in the spring. They were very reactionary in the spring, and they didn't know a lot about the disease, and they didn't know a lot about the cleaning protocol. We still will rely on the Department of Health. My guess is that they won't react as strongly as they did in the spring, because they have a much deeper understanding of it now. Each time we're going to have to rely on them. So there isn't a mechanism. Before, when you had a positive case, you had to close for 24 to 48 hours and sanitize. I don't know if that directive is in place right now. Is everybody still there?
Tina, I would like to, can I speak to your point about transportation earlier? We did go down and meet with Coxsackie Transport that still will be able to assist us. They have assisted us in the past with the private and parochial transportation. They're still planning on that. I want you to know that we are still planning on utilizing that. That'll be a piece of it, just to let you know that that's something we've also already done, is reach out to Coxsackie for those private and parochial students.
Okay, sounds good.
And for my piece tonight, I don't have much more other than every question leads to 2 or 3 more other questions. And I just want to give props to the reopening committee again. They did, they were trying to do work knowing that New York State guidance was coming. And a lot of what they've done really, in the instructional groups anyway, really spoke to the same exact things that New York State came out with. So I think that was a positive. Some of the things that are happening now within the district are teachers know that they need training. So we're trying to think strategically about professional development. There's a lot of local organizations like BOCES and CASDA that are doing work around what does distance learning look like? What are some lessons that we learned from the spring, and how can we do it better if we have to go fully remote again in the future? So our instructional technologist, Ms. Buckley, is planning some other courses that'll be offered in August as well. We also have some curriculum writing going on, and I think everyone for this summer has that lens that we have to be able to do this. This is the potential of doing this remotely. So they're looking at their curriculum through that lens as well. Other than that, I just wanted to kind of let the board know that about our summer programming. BOCES, our students who are attending the BOCES program are doing well. I had a check-in with their coordinator just yesterday. Mr. Kerrigan, who's our APEX coordinator for the district program, he said that we are actually able to add a couple of students they weren't able to reach prior, so we're able to increase the number of students who are attending that. And then our middle school program will start next week. It'll be a similar model, but because we're not using APEX for middle school, it's not a credit recovery. We're using a platform called IXL, which some of your students may be familiar with. They may have used it when they were remote learning in the spring. It's assessments in addition to all of the content that they would be learning as well.
Any other questions about reopening?
No?
This has consumed no fewer than 10 hours a day of our work for the past 3 weeks. And it's ramped up to involve a lot more other people as the plan has come out. So we hope to have something that will be functional and will meet the needs of our school community.
You want to jump in? Do you want to jump in? I'm wondering.
No.
Okay.
We've had a discussion about outdoor school facilities usage. I mentioned that we may need to, with the expectations that we are checking, self-health check everybody who enters a school facility. I was worried about having to change our action plans around playgrounds, the track and the tennis courts. But in talking with our safety specialists today, they said that the threshold for our expectations of sanitizing and maintaining those areas outside is very different than inside the building. So I don't anticipate having to make any changes at this point, other than making sure our signage clearly states that patrons should exercise social distancing and good wear masks and hand sanitization processes if available. But I don't anticipate any changes around that. I was also worried about liability. There have not been a lot of answers or a lot of cases, legal cases of institutions who have provided access to something where someone has gotten the virus. So that was the only other concern that I had. And since there are no test cases, it doesn't appear to be something that we should be imminently afraid of. I don't know whether the board has any comments or concerns about that. Oh, by the way, this also includes, we have some outdoor rec athletic groups that are using our facilities. And they're expected to follow all of the guidelines, social distancing and other guidelines as well. And if they're not, they'll be asked to leave our property. Joanne, do you know, other than baseball, is there anyone else who's using our facilities right now?
Not right now. Some of the things we're starting to prepare for is the before and after school programs. We'll be meeting with them next week because been meeting with our safety and Needham group today to go into some details. They have to abide by our rules for social distancing, as well as they have their own guidelines that they have to meet. So when we think about the before and after school program, that itself is a challenging thing because right now the Office of Child and Family Services approves spaces within our district or within our buildings that they can use. And to be honest with you, they have to go through to see how are they going to promote social distancing in the spaces that are approved. So I'll be reaching out. We'll be meeting with them. That'll be part of the conversation. There has been so much work. As far as our grounds right now, we have pretty much limited the baseball people that are using our fields. They have their own set of guidelines that they have to do. They can only have 1 or 2 parents. We know that they're starting up with baseball games again. We have to make sure that they know that we have signage out. But again, we don't necessarily have to police that. We have to make sure that they're informed of what the guidelines, but they also have their own. But there are no other outside agencies, I believe, that are using the facility right now that we've approved anyway.
Any questions? Starting next Monday, in alignment with what the Department of Health has asked of us, staff will be asked to complete an attestation, which basically it's 3 questions that just says, have you come in contact with someone who has COVID? Have you been diagnosed with COVID, or have you been to a state that has COVID, the high frequency COVID right now? And people have to complete that along with a self-diagnosis of whether they have a temperature of 100 and other symptoms. Every single day they come into work. If we have consultants that are coming in, if we have contractors that are coming in, they also have to complete that same attestation before they're able to come to work. We have it in a Google form right now, but we're working to develop an app that will allow people to do that prior to coming into our buildings, because we want to take the test after we come into our buildings.
Brian, I think one of the other things, which I'm not sure if we have a lot of contractors working in our buildings now or not, but I know some of the other school districts, if contractors are working in the buildings or if they're getting any kind of deliveries or anything, they need to know the person's name ahead of time, just in case there was a positive case. It's for that contact for tracing it. So I know there are other schools that do have different procedures in place for delivery people, construction people, that, you know, they're going through the same process, what you're saying, but we're also documenting it so we know who they are.
Yeah, the construction groups, because they were among the phase one reopening, they were forced to put in place some of the parameters that we're talking about now with the proximity and masks and recording of health a while ago. But you're right, I don't know what we do for delivery. We'll ask that question. And we know that definitely as a part of our plan, we're going to limit visitors to the building to the fullest extent possible, including families. So we'll have to figure out how we help with transitioning beginning and end of school days and for doctor's appointments and things like that. We have a lot to work out to ensure that we're keeping everybody as safe as possible. And the last thing that I had is we have 4 or 5 solar projects going on in the school district right now. It is likely that all of them at some juncture will be asking for a pilot agreement with the district. I spoke with Ryan Malahy, our school attorney today, because one of them is a little bit ahead of the curve and is asking for a pilot with us. And he's estimated, based on what other local agencies have received from these solar companies, that they pay approximately $2,200 a year per megawatt. This is a fairly small project that they're working on in the town of Bethlehem. It's about 5,000 megawatts. But I've asked Ryan to have that agency present us with something in writing so that the board could act through resolution whether or not to accept their pilot. But I wanted to let you know ahead of time because there's at least 4, perhaps 5 other solar projects going on in our school district right now.
Ryan, do these go through the IDA, the county, the town, any other agencies?
They do also go through the other agencies. So it's twofold. One is they're negotiating the payment amount with us. With the other municipalities, they'll be negotiating their own payment amounts. For instance, I asked Ryan today, I wanted to know what the statistics were on the piece of property we're talking about. If the property is giving us $2,000 now because it's vacant land and it's going to give us $11,000 for the next 10 years, then we have a sense of what the return is for this capital investment. We should also know what the estimated value of the finished product is, similar to the discussion we had about the property on the Carver Recycling.
Do we have any other solar facilities in town or in our school district already that we have pilots for? Or
I don't think we have any active ones, but what we keep getting is SECRA requests and SECRA and environmental impact requests from, we know there's going to be a large one that's going in on 101 near the chicken farm, about 2 miles from the high school, middle school. There's another one going in near the CSX train yard. And I think this one is a smaller one over in the town of Bethlehem. But none of them are on our rolls yet, are they, Joanne?
No.
So what do they pay full taxes if they don't have a pilot? I know there's one by the CSX already. There's a big one, but there's actually 2, one on one side of CSX and then one down farther on past the other side of the tracks.
Yeah, you can see them as you go past Sabec. You're right. They're paying full taxes. They're not on a pilot right now.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I guess if all these solar companies are going to start coming asking for pilots, that we should probably set some kind of standard and say, this is what it is, and stick to the same thing for all of them. And so you don't have to negotiate every single time somebody wants to put a solar panel up.
Agreed. And Ryan would know, I mean, he's worked with other school districts throughout the Capital District. I trust his estimation. And actually, they were offering less than that. He already, on behalf of the district, already asked for a 15% increase from what they first had suggested. So when we see it in writing, we'll be able to get a better sense of what it looks like sum total.
Yeah, and Dr. Bailey, we can also reach out to the county IDA and the Greenville the Greenville. They're a little bit different, Albany County and Greene County. But we can reach out to them to find out how many pending ones there are and give an update to the Board of Education.
And one other thing, the last thing I'm going to bring to the board next week is another agency. It very well, actually, it's another solar company. They have to do an environmental impact study through SECRA. And we have the opportunity as a board to allow another partnering agency to take over the investigation on the environmental impact. And the Town of Coeymans Planning and Zoning Board is the agency that would take on that responsibility. Ryan thinks it's a very favorable idea to hand it over to another agency to do this work, and then we yield the benefit of whatever their reports are. So I'll be bringing that to the board 2 weeks from now as well. There's just a document that signs off and says we want them to do this work.
Okay. Do you have anything else? Joanne, you have anything?
Yeah, I'll give you a brief update. I want to make sure that, you know, while all of our time right now is really spent on how are we going to reopen, and part of that is ensuring that we have enough PPE equipment. We worked, we participated with a consortium with BOCES to purchasing, and we are also purchasing on our own to make sure that we have enough PPE equipment, masks, gloves, anything that we need, clear face shields. We're making sure that we have enough of that. We are also looking to make sure that we coordinate all of our disinfecting chemicals and cleaning products through the O&M, Bill Schramm and Jason. And then we'll be making sure that every department is using the same EPA-approved product to disinfect our campus and any area that we need to. So we're in the middle of doing that. I also want you to know that we are also working on a water solution down at Peter B for right now. Ultimately, we'd like to drill a well down there so we can always make sure that we have water on that field. The field looks much better, although it is a little bit brown right now. I do understand that. Given what we've dealt with for heat in the last 4 or 5 weeks, we can understand that. They're bringing a tank down there. We're going to be using the water wheel that the district has to correct some of that, hopefully bring it back a little bit greener. It's definitely in much better condition than it was a year or 2 years ago. I also sent an email to the audit committee. We are meeting on Friday. I sent you out some information on that. We're still winding up we're gearing up for our external audit. We are still working right in the midst of our OSC audit. We're not done with that yet because that's still being done remotely. And we're also trying to ready for ourselves for the beginning of the year. We'll be working, we're placing orders for the schools and the supplies. We have also the district office through Harrison has placed an order. We'll be coordinating what we've gotten in the district out to staff so that they know what they've ordered themselves. Their budgets were lowered a little bit. And then what we have ordered ahead as a district, how we can supplant that. So we'll be communicating that in the next few weeks to the staff so they know what we have. And again, I will tell you, we have been working, the plan and reopening has taken up how are we going to get kids here? What are we going to do? And going through a lot of that. So that's keeping us busy 9 to 5, actually. We're killing it.
9 to 5. Isn't that banker hours?
Oh, I wish it was 9 to 5. It would be nice, 9 to 5, I'll tell you. Fred's here at 5 o'clock, so who knows? I don't know.
You said it.
I don't even know I'm awake until 9 o'clock, so it works out pretty good. I drive here, like on autopilot.
Joanne might be fibbing a little bit because she started work at 10 minutes to 2 this morning. So I think she might be underestimating.
That's true.
Must have had a bad thought when you woke up in the middle of the night.
Something to do.
I think my thought is, honestly, in 25 years of being in schools, and I think this holds true for everything, Bray, Pete, we have never had to do this before and to be in an education environment and do all these things from the instructor level to the administrator level. This is something that of the likes we've never dealt with before. And it is creating I mean, we'll be better for it. I will not say we won't. We'll be better. Our district will be good, but it is quite an arduous task, to say the least.
Good. Brian, you have anything else? I know one of the things for old business, our website open up next week. Is that still on target?
Fingers crossed. They've migrated everything over there, and they're just doing some final touches on the app. We're still going to keep our existing website and our existing communications in place through August because we don't want any disruption in service. So what we'll do is once we're live, once we're ready to go live, we'll do a PR campaign to let people know. We don't want to make a mistake, of course, and flick the switch and find out that things aren't there they're supposed to be there. So, and now is the worst time not to have the communication that we need. We've all decided that.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else they want to discuss?
Brian, I just wanted to bring up some of the communication. I think that we had an email at one point about a Times Union article, and just kind of revisiting what our expectations are as a district to let us know when a staff person or a faculty person puts out a public statement on behalf of the district, just so that we have clear lines of communication and can expect the unexpected, not be blindsided. And if there is a response that's necessary, that we have the opportunity to kind of research whatever that statement was and have thoughtful communication.
I'm unsure how to satisfy that requirement because we have 425 employees. I won't necessarily know that they've spoken to somebody. They could be captured at a soccer game or at the mall or in front of our school. Unquestionably, if I know about someone communicating with the media about something, and I know that there's an article or news coverage, I would definitely share it with the board. There's no question about that. I think the incident that you're talking about last week was a complete misrepresentation of what the staff member said from an innocuous conversation just about, hey, what do you think about, and I wonder what's going on, to quoting him was something that was completely misrepresented. I don't know how we would prepare for that. And as a reporter that talks to that staff member quite frequently, both in his role as a staff member of the role he has here, but also the role he has in the Capital District. So I caught everybody blindsided. So you bringing it to my attention was the first I had even seen that. Plus the staff member who was interviewed, that was the first that he had seen that. So I'm not sure how to correct the process if none of us know that this has happened.
I don't know. I think that when someone has a direct quote, then there has to be some sort of conversation about how that quote was obtained. I mean, if a media outlet went out of their way to misrepresent themselves, again, that's an issue. And, you know, something can be taken out of context at any point in time. But if there's a quote attributed to them about something within the district, I think there should be a clear expectation that there is at least a dialogue and some sort of explanation about how that came about. And I think as a district, we should have the recourse of contacting that media outlet if it was a misrepresentation, because that left it wide open to our entire community to hear something that may have been, like you said, innocuous, but it sounded as though it was coming directly from our district. So I know that if I have my name in a paper that's about my employer, I had better let my executive director know that's coming out in some way, shape, or form, because ultimately we are responsible for what gets put in there, or responsible for correcting it if it was a misrepresentation.
The topic that you're thinking about, do you think it would have been it depends on the topic, of course. If it's one that's salacious, is it a good idea to engage in someone on the topic to undo something that was misquoted so that they can capture as many quotes as they want to try and correct it? there's a delicate balance in trying to decide what the desired outcome, what's the best desired outcome. It's a tricky thing. And I don't truly know what the accountability is for a reporter to say, I heard you say this. I don't know, do we sue them for slander when they misquote somebody? I'm not sure what the pathway is around that. If it's the board's directive, I can call that reporter and try and undo something that is quite potentially sensational and cause more trouble in the process. That's what I think is a possibility, but I will do whatever the board asks me to do.
I do think minimally there should be some pathway that you alert us to what could be in the media. If that was the first you were hearing it, I understand and we move forward. But and I don't know if that needs to be something that is explored through policy or whether there's something that should be a code of conduct. But I do think that the board should have a higher awareness of something that is circulating about the district as opposed to finding out about it on the news.
Duly noted. And that's why I use my news and notes to keep the board updated. Just on public affairs.
Now, the news and notes, though, are not just for the board. The news and notes are the things that you put out for the entire district, correct?
No, they're just things that occur within the district that might be pertinent to the board. Public information from our board meetings and things that might be going on in the community. So, and that particular topic I did include in my news and notes the week beforehand. But any of those news and notes would be publicly available if asked for by the public.
Okay. All right. We have an audit finance committee meeting this Friday, 9 o'clock. Joanne, you'll send out the Zoom or Google Meets or whatever we do.
I believe I've done it already, but I will make sure and I'll send a reminder, Mr. Reveley. I'll do that.
Thank you. We have no reason to go into executive session, so I need a motion to adjourn. Mr. Ross, Mr. Engel, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks.
Everyone.
All right.